Pop in, say hi. If you've never been into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And you know what? I have been in the inside all week, but I thought tonight we'd do something a little bit different. I thought we would try to keep it light, right? Have a nice evening, hang out. If you've never hung out with us before, right? Pop in, say hi, meet my moderators. And here's Owen, one of my head moderators on this channel. One of my Oh my goodness, he's been with me for absolutely for everywhere, has been with me for a long time. And if you were to pop in and say hi, right, he'd be one of the guys that would envelop you, right? Not to mention one of the ladies that will pop in today. I have a few ladies who like to hang out with us on Sunday nights, and this is a show that I always meant to be light. You know, when I first woke up to some of these ideas, and we'll keep this part short, right? When I first woke up to some of these ideas, I was in a hairy, scary moment in my life. A life where my life was just crashing in every aspect that I could think of. In fact, I almost ended up living on the streets. I don't know how close technically I had gotten to that. I know that I felt that it could happen at any moment. Got so bad I would go to work and I would think that I was going to come home from work and the doors would be locked and my cat would be trapped in there. I would lose all my possessions and I would be sleeping in the snow. This week, you guys, it has been minus 40s, minus 45s with the wind chill. It didn't quite get to minus 50, but we still have a couple of more days in this cold spell. Next week, it seems like it's going to warm up a little bit. As you come in, let me know because I know, especially in the northern part of the United States and almost all of Canada, we are struggling. They're expecting 50 millimeters of rain or snow today. So let's just see what 50 is. Oh my goodness, quite a bit of snow, right? This is how much snow is going to fall tonight in Toronto. So they're just starting to get hit now with the weather, the bad weather. But I do suspect, right, that the northern United States is also getting hit. I mean, it's a coast to coast kind of situation, right? I'm not feeling really stressed out about it because we have had such mild winters in the past few years, like really mild, where it's actually like in the middle of January, middle of February, it's in the plus numbers, right? So bad that the snow plowers, the guys who take to the streets and keep all the streets clear as snow and the sidewalks clear as snow, they had no work, right? In the past few years. I think they got maybe one or two or maybe three different days that they were able to get out there and make a few dollars, but for the most part, no. We have had a pretty cold winter this year. I'd have to say that. You still have snow falling in New York, eh? Owen, oh my goodness. Yeah, it has been a cold week. I have managed to get out though. I've had to really gear up to get outside a little bit. I haven't gone for any long walks or anything, but just to get out and about to get fresh air and whatever little bit I can get as I'm all muffed up and scarfed up and snow suited up. But just to say that at least I was able to get out for a little bit, right? But yeah, we got a couple of more days left, and then it'll just go back to the regular kind of winter that we've had. for the past few years, and maybe next year we're going into single or sorry next year next week we're going into single digits, so we're looking at maybe -6, -7, right? But no more than -9. So we'll see how it goes. You know the weather, right? They never get it right, but they're getting better and better at kind of um knowing a little bit ahead, right? They're getting good when those hurricanes say they're coming, they're coming, right? They might not hit it on the button exactly where it's going to land, but they've been doing pretty good. Tornadoes, right? The bad weather this week, we got a little bit of heads up that this weather was coming in. For myself, I usually take a look at what's going on in Edmonton, and I know whatever's going on in Edmonton will hit us within 15 or 16 hours, right? So that's how I trust the weather. But with this kind of, and it is, I would consider this a storm because it's so extreme and, how cold it is. And even though, you know, Manitoba itself is not feeling like a storm, that bitter cold is something so bad. I had to put some extra go through all my hat collection and everything because there are still homeless out in the streets. I don't know how well they're managing, but if I happen to see somebody that needs a good toque or a good hat with ear covers on it and something, I should have those in my backpack for them, right? So at the very least, if I can't give them a few dollars, right, at least maybe I could give them a hat. I don't have any gloves. I had some amazing, amazing gloves put aside for me this year. I hadn't lost any gloves and being creative, they were really nice gloves. A couple of those pairs of gloves that I had, I'm sure were over $100, and I only paid them $1.50, $2 for them. And I ended up, I have a few boys in my family, my brother-in-laws and my nephews. So I wanted to make sure that, you know, they had some nice gloves. So I offered those up as Christmas gifts. And at the same time, I don't mind. They weren't gifts to myself, right? These were things that I purchased and getting good deals. But it feels like re-gifting because that money's not coming out of my pocket in the moment. And those gloves were so appreciated, like so appreciated. I'm so glad, because I wasn't too sure. Everybody gets hats and gloves at Christmas. They, oh, nice, and they toss it aside and they get all excited about the PS5 and stuff, right? And you know, and I was pleased to see that everybody was really happy with the gifts that I put together this year, right? So it's that adapt and conquer and ride the waves. And as the years go by, I'm going to be curious to see how it plays out, how much we will have to learn to adapt and conquer, right? I'm not somebody who hangs out in headline news very much, but you do get a little bit antsy when you see Donald Trump's and Art Carney. Is that his name? No, that's a comedian. I don't even know my president's name. I know his last name is Carney, Prime Minister Carney. Let's just say that. But I've seen their faces online quite a bit this week, and so it does make me a little bit more alert to the goings on in the world. Okay, what do we? Oh, Andrew's here too. Andrew says, looks like we have 11 inches of snow. Wow, that's quite a bit in Bloomington. The snow has stopped, but now we're going to have very cold temperatures and wind chill numbers. I'm glad I bought extra groceries. Yeah, well, I did plan just to hold up until this was all over, but it was a long stretch, this cold spell that we have. I think we're in our seventh or eighth day now, and we still have a couple of more days until, not that we're totally out of it, but the weather is a little bit more to the norm, right? Where we're in the minus 20s or the minus teens. And those minus 45s with the wind chill, I tell you, and I'm telling you the truth on this. I geared up to go to the store. Just 2 or 3 days ago, I went to the store and I put on a big pair of sweats. I put my snow socks, my big fuzzy socks on. I put my snow pants on. I had a sweatshirt on. I put a vest over that sweatshirt, right? And my snow pants, and then I put my big muff face mask over me. And then I put my pink one around me with the extra pockets, if my hands got cold. So I had that one around me. And of course my toque that covered my ears. I was bundled. I couldn't even see, not even leaving the apartment yet. I couldn't even see, right? And that's because I put my sunglasses on, and because I wear glasses, I always wear those sunglasses that fit over your reading glasses. And I didn't even get a half a block. Oh, and I wore my gloves, and then I put on an extra pair of mitts on top. I was warm. Halfway down the block, I was absolutely I was cold. I was feeling it. The only warm part of me were my feet. And that was only because I'm a Keens girl and I had my Keens boots. And they're only rated to minus 40, I think, Celsius, these boots. But my feet were toasty warm. I'll attribute it to my nice fuzzy socks too, which help. I really do love the Keen brand of shoes. I have a few pair. I have my wet sandals. I have my regular sandals. I have two pairs of the avalanche boots. And I'm online because you guys know I've done my goal list, and on the goal list was a good pair of hiking shoes. And now, if at all possible, I'd like those hiking shoes to be Keen shoes. And I'm finding them, right? Fairly inexpensive for like $50. And if you had to buy them new, they'd be pretty close to $200. But I'm just not finding my size yet. But I think what I'll do is, because mostly the boys, the guys, they like the Keen brand. The women aren't so familiar of them because, we like the pink and the fancy ties and stuff. We want to be all cute and stuff. So, right, Keen is a manly kind of, well, I would say I shouldn't be, what do you call that, stereotyping, but they are manly kind of brand, but they're so comfortable. If you guys are looking for a good, like I would say to Andrew, if you wanted to invest 100 and, well, they'd probably be a little bit cheaper in the States, probably cost you about $130, I would think, in the States. The Keen Avalanche boot is the best boot I have ever had. The traction on them are absolutely amazing. I don't wipe out on the sidewalks in the winter anymore. And also, the thing about the Keen brand of shoes, I feel like a commercial. The Keen brand of shoes is that the toe, it has a real wide toe, so it gives you that feeling of being in your bare feet where everything can just kind of spread out. Nothing is all tight, and where your big toe has to cross your index toe and stuff. Actually, let me just grab a pair. They're they're not perfect, but they're winter boots, and I have been. So these are the Keen, but look at the traction on those, and look at the toes, and you can see how wide those toes are. I should have cleaned them before I showed them to you. And they've got some stretch here, and they are insulated, uh, and they are good till, what is it? Oh, minus 32 Celsius. So, but I had I had no problem at minus 45 with the wind chill at all. But these, and on top of that, there's slip-ons, you guys. You don't have to deal, and that's probably the best of it. I have a one of those IKEA shoehorns, and I actually had a shoehorn for Andrew, but it was so long that they wanted to charge me like, oh, I can't believe it. I was when I was putting his Christmas parcel together, I says, I can't throw this in his parcel. It's too long and I'll have to use a bigger box, right? So I left it there and I says, oh, when things ease up and the price goes down and the postage and stuff, I'll send him this shoehorn, eh? And yeah, he might not ever get his shoehorn the way the tariffs are going. I'm actually in the process of moving my sister's entire uh, eBay store over to my marketplace right now, just because it's just too hard for her to sell anything to the states because people are spending equally in the tariffs than the value of the item. I don't know if anybody saw, if anybody there watches Curiosity Incorporated, he actually had big issue with shipping into the States. It didn't have anything to do with the tariffs, but right, huge issues with UPS and it's just getting really difficult for Canadian eBay sellers to do business with the states anymore. Right? It's unfortunate, but in that adapt and conquer, we've learned to kind of move it all over to marketplace, which is good too because now people don't have to pay for shipping, right? They just have to go to some stranger's house, knock on the door, hand over the money, pick up their item. And so that works. And at the same time, people don't have to pay the eBay fees and the sellers don't have to pay, oh, and the shipping, right? And PayPal takes a cut too. So my sister will be able to sell a lot of these items that she had up for a lot of money. She'll be able to knock the price down a lot because the cost for her is going to be right. The customer always paid the shipping anyway, so she wasn't worried about the shipping, but the eBay fees and the tariffs now, and so eBay fees, tariffs, oh, and PayPal, right? Yeah, so it's gonna work out a whole lot better. And it keeps me busy, you guys. I've been really enjoying, I brought in $400 in sales my first week, right? Not too much of it got saved, right? Me getting a little bit of a cut too. I don't take the 50-50, right? I charge her 20% of whatever I sell, which is equal to the eBay fees. So she's even saving money at that, and also at the same time because she's still working full time, my sister, right? And that's just a lot of work for her to do. And she was feeling the blues, right? She was feeling really out of sorts because, it's depressing when your livelihood gets taken away from you, right? And so it put her in a depressive mood. And I don't want to see my sisters sad. We should all be moving forward, right? We should all be optimistic that things are getting better. I get it, right? Not everybody rides the waves like I do, right? But it is in that adapt and conquer, never giving up, that we can actually, right, get through the tough times. So I'm not going to worry too much about what's going on, with seeing Trump and Prime Minister Carney all over the television and in the news and stuff. And like I said, I'm not watching the news, but as I'm just kind of floating around, right, I see there's a lot going on. And if there's anything on YouTube, well, they got great big fantastical right, thumbnails that make it look like it's super, super scary out there. Okay, let me come in here and see what's going on. Slip-on boots and a shoehorn. That's a winning combination. I hate it when I'm outdoors in the cold and my boot laces come undone. Yeah, if you just just find out who's doing the Keen brand in Bloomington. I'm sure there's a few shoe stores that are promoting that specific brand. I know here in Winnipeg, it's Canadian Footwear that carries the Keen brand, and if you like Keen, you'll love every style of shoes because they're all made for comfort and the freedom of the feet and like protecting the feet. I think, right? I don't consider myself, right, like an old lady yet, even though I am 64. I never had kids. I'm not married. I live on my own. I'm single. I don't feel my age. I don't feel aches and pains, and I'm grateful for that because I know that's not the norm, right? But I don't recognize my age. I couldn't believe it. Yesterday was my nephew's 30th birthday. I said to my sister Alice, it was her son, right? And I said, Alice, I thought maybe he was 24, 25 years old. 30 or a 30-year-old son. Wow, right? That was eye-opening for me. But again, like I said, I don't recognize my age because I don't have those signals, right? I don't have those kids. I don't have the recognition of my age facing me day in and day out, right? But there will come a time, right? Because they say once it starts, it starts, right? And it just carries on. Yeah, but maybe Andrew, if you happen, right, and if you can afford it, they're not soup. When you look at these boots, oh, I forgot to say for you, Andrew, what you probably appreciate is because look at me with my baby finger here. Doo, doo, doo. They're lightweight, super lightweight, so that you'll be able to pick your feet up off the ground without shuffling and your feet hurting because you got big, heavy winter shoes on. I think there isn't a better senior brand of winter boot. And I call them a winter boot because I wear them all through winter because they have that special liner in there that makes it so they can tolerate the cold. Um, but I wear them right up until May because you have to get through the spring. You have to get through the mucky stuff and the rain and stuff, they work as a rain boot. And to be honest, this is my good pair. I have two pairs. That's how much I love them, and my old pair have better treads than these ones, right? I guess with every product, right? Sometimes they change the design a little bit, but I know my other avalanche boots have crazy traction on them. So I put them away, because as I do get older, there'll come a point where I'm not going to be as agile as I am now, and I'll probably appreciate the heavier traction. So I've just cleaned them and I've put them away, and I'm just going to wear my new boots until, well, either in springtime I'm walking through mud puddles and I can feel the water seeping through, or the traction just goes out of them. But with two boots, I think I'm good for the rest of my life, unless that I happen to be in a thrift store or something and I find a pair for $10 or $20. Oh, and I would grab them in the minute. And that's only because my first pair of these boots I did find in a thrift store in that job that put the roof over my head, and I got them for $5 and I fell in love with them, and I will never, right, I do have Skechers and stuff, but it's important for me to take care of my feet because I explore the outside too, right? I want to be 80 years old and be able to go for maybe like not do Mount Everest or anything, but I would still like to do trails, wouldn't I? Maybe, not big mountains, but I will be out in the provincial parks as retirement. It's the plan, right? To do that RV life in my retirement. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I trust that, right, it will happen, and I'll be able to have that life that I get so excited about every September. But to be able to do that full time, oh my goodness, that would be amazing, right? I would like to spend my seniors years exploring, doing road trips like my dad did, going on vacations to other countries. I would love to see Scotland and the Mediterranean. Oh my goodness, that would be amazing. I'd love to go to Croatia. I don't know if it's as beautiful now as it was before the war happened, you know. Um, but I do know that Croatia is a beautiful country too. So I would love. I had the opportunity to go to Croatia when my husband was doing a tour, but whenever I was talking to him, right, because one day a week he was allowed a 2 minute phone call to check in with me and stuff. And I could hear the mortars in the background when he was talking to me. And I just said, yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to go. It was Zagreb. That's where we were going to meet. We were going to meet in Zagreb. And I just said, yeah, no, I don't think so. And you know what that man did instead? When he got his leave, because he was doing 6 month tours, he did a few of those 6 months tours, but he came home to spend time with me, right? And it took like 4 days because you have to get to the hotel at the airport and you have to sit there and there's layaways and stuff like that. It took him like 4 days to get home to me. He could only stay 3 or 4 days, and then he had to head back before his leave was over. Otherwise, he would have been considered AWOL. They probably would have come after him at that. Okay. Yeah, great boots, Andrew. Check them out. I think you would appreciate a pair of boots like that. And I think Keen is an American product. Oh, Kathy's here. Hello. Oh, William's here too. Hi, William. Oh my goodness. I haven't seen William in a few weeks. It's nice to see you in here. How's the weather in Nova Scotia, Kathy? How's the weather on the East Coast? Yeah, it's if this is going to get that far, I don't think our weather really affects the East Coast. I think it just kind of does a U and comes up the east side of Ontario and then heads back up to north, right? But yeah, but even the East Coast, you guys have the oceans and the icebergs. I remember when I went to New Brunswick with my husband, I was in absolute shock. I wanted to see the East Coast beach. And actually, it just really was so different. It was because I'm from British Columbia, sandy beaches and the mountains, and they had mountains too, but those cliffs, oh my goodness, it was like cliffs out of a horror movie, like those old black and white movies with the house at the end of the cliff, and everything's all black and stuff with the waves crashing up. That's what the East Coast is. Right? It's not nice sandy beaches and stuff. It was still absolutely beautiful, but what amazed me about the Atlantic Ocean was to be able to visually see the icebergs. That I thought was absolutely incredible. And they were huge too, just floating around out there, right? Yeah, I thought that was really neat. Do you ever see the icebergs, Kathy, when you're out and about doing little road trips and stuff? Okay. Okay, what does it say? People in Bloomington aren't too good about clearing snow and ice and slush from sidewalks. A good pair of boots would be valuable. An investment. That's what it is, an investment in your life, an investment in your physical well-being. Yeah, if I could, right? And they should actually make me a spokesperson for Keen Shoes. Like I said, I've got three or four different styles and probably 5 or 6 different pairs. Some of these I have two of each, right? Um, oh, Eugene's here too. Hi, Eugene. William say, anyone seen the new Masters of the Universe trailer this week on YouTube? Oh, they're making a movie, William, of your favorite characters. I bet you're going to go to the first night that it goes into theaters. You're going to be standing in line to see it. Oh, it's cold in New Jersey too, William. You got snow too? And icy snow at Brunswick County, Virginia. Virginia, even. Snow in Virginia. Oh my goodness. At Freeman, Virginia in USA. We're getting a foot of snow tonight. Oh, really? Will it last or will it melt away? I would assume probably it would melt away in where you are. It doesn't last very long. I know coming from British Columbia, I'd wake up on Christmas morning just hoping that there would be snow. Usually it was just frost on the ground, but that would count. And there were a couple of years growing up. I remember my dad making us a real igloo out in the front yard. And we lived across the street from my school. And I remember, that one year being the popular kid. I think it was in like grade one. I was probably the oldest, grade one. I think I was turning 8 years old when I started school. I never went to kindergarten. And you had to be in school, grade one, by the time you reach 7. But the thing is, I turned 7 in October, so technically I didn't start school until the following years, and then I would have my birthday, and I'd be 8 year old grade one, and I rocked grade one really well, because by that time I was already reading. My dad would bring home comic books, and I wanted to know what those little white things were. I knew I'd look at the picture and I'd look at those boxes over the comics, and I would kind of guess in the beginning what they were saying just by the action in the picture. And eventually I taught myself to read. So by the time I hit grade one, I could read fluently. Grade two, they sent me into a special program it was a trial that they were trying to figure out by teaching children how to read by using the sound of the letter of the alphabet rather than using the the alphabet number itself, like A. We called that ah, right? Because we did it with the sound. And it became difficult because then, when you have words like photo, right? Then you would write it Photo, right? And not Photo, because you would write the words the way they sound and not the way they were specifically supposed to be spelt. And it messed me up so bad that I failed grade two. And that was a little bit embarrassing, even for somebody my age. I think by that time I was 8 years old. And it was extremely embarrassing for a small child. And at that point, I think that's where I never thought of it before, but I think that's where I started to not pay attention. Or maybe that specific event affected me so bad that I naturally became a bad speller. I was always a bad speller. Avid reader, and I was good with words, but the spelling of them, I was pretty bad. I'm much better now, but now we have Grammarly, and as I make my mistakes and they course correct those mistakes for you, right, on your computer, Grammarly. If you don't have it, Grammarly is a great spelling app to use. I use it all the time. They catch everything. They'll even phrase my sentences for me and stuff. But yeah, in that repetition of taking a look and seeing I have to spell the word this way, eventually I got a whole lot better at spelling. But I was into my 50s by then, and probably it was only I was in my 60s before I thought like, oh, okay, I'm getting pretty good. But because I am in such deep subjects, and because I'm with professors and lectures and these medical and psychological and I I have to, in that repetitiveness, get practice on these big words that I can't even I can't even pronounce some of these words, right? Sometimes I even have to even Google the words and get proper definitions for them so that I can understand sometimes what they're talking about, right? It doesn't happen very often. I can usually flow pretty good with somebody else explaining something. But if they throw in a word, what was a word yesterday that I was curious about? I write them down. Oh, what's this? Right? What is oh like today? Um I didn't know what a paleo diet was. And so I Googled what a paleo diet was. Do you guys know what a paleo diet is? I'm probably pronouncing it improperly, but it's a diet that is based on Mediterranean food. And it's supposed to be one of the healthiest ways to eat is the Mediterranean way. Okay, let's come in here. I haven't seen the trailer yet, but I expect I'll be seeing it soon. Andrew likes those those characters too. I know William is a total fanatic on them, but Andrew says I learned to read with a phonics workbook. It was a great help in learning to read and pronounce and our complicated language. And because you love to write so much, right? I have a great idea for a book, and if I could dish out some money for, right, the prorated Grammarly, I will most definitely. I've got the title for the book. I've got the idea for the book, and I don't have to base them on like create characters in the books because they'll just be played out in the characters that I had in my life. But it is in the sequencing, you know, beginning, middle, end, that you kind of want to, what do you do? Do a chart, right? So that you know the events of the book and then be able possibly each one of those events be a chapter, and that takes time, right? And also in taking time, that takes time away from putting a roof over your head. So it has to get to the point where I'm putting a roof over my head properly, that I can allow myself to relax and take that pressure off of me, and to actually apply myself to, for say, 2 or 3 hours a day to write a really good book. I think I'm a good storyteller, right? So I don't think the storytelling will be a problem, and I don't even think the spelling and the pronunciation and the grammar would be a problem because I have, right? I'll have Grammarly to be able to do that for me. So it's just my imagination that I'm able to tell an interesting, impactful story, because whatever story I tell, there's always a lesson in it, which is the lesson today, you guys, because I made some notes. I didn't spend much time, but some funny stories. Because remember last week what we said, that this week we're going to keep it light, right? We were going to just enjoy each other's company, maybe have a laugh or two. And so I sat here maybe for 15 minutes, and I thought of some of my life experience here, that people in the moment they might not have been funny, but when you look back on them, you go, "Oh my goodness," right? The things we did for money, the things we did for survival, you know, um, and just in our regular movement in our everyday day to day, there are always things to giggle about. And it's important to remember that one of the biggest powers in the world, whether it's for our mindset, right? Or in those difficult times that we are in, and even our physical well-being, right? There's nothing like the power of laughter. I believe in that wholeheartedly. And I think the world would move a whole lot better if they moved away from the aggression and, put trust and joy and positivity and a greater outlook for the future. And you throw those ingredients in, right? That they would work 10 times faster. And at the same time, you get that, "I'm in. Oh, that sounds like such a great idea. I'm in too," right? And then the next thing you know, the whole world possibly could be on the same positive path, right? It's just a matter of somebody starting. And it's exactly what this world needs right now. Like when you're in social media, like you see the negative, like from one moment to the next. And, you want to partake in the joyous things, you know, and it's just so rare, right? I was never a big comedy person. I think now I'm more of a comedy person. Still haven't seen Anaconda yet. Really wanted to see Anaconda with Jack Black, but, I've never really been a comedy person. If there's something going on in the theaters and stuff, I like the dramas, I like the action movies and the fantasy movies like the Lord of the Rings, or I wasn't a big fan of the Harry Potters, but I really did like the Lord of the Rings, right? So if I ever get the opportunity, and wouldn't that be an amazing time if I was able to be on the road and I had my RV and it's all pitch black outside at 7 o'clock at night, that I could be inside my RV and I'm by myself, right? My RV's clean. There's nothing to do. I'm not ready for bed at 7 o'clock, that I could apply myself for a few hours, right? Because most provincial parks, they're a little bit of ways from the tower. So, you're not going to have internet either. But, if you got RAM on your computer and stuff, you could just go to town and just apply yourself in working on a novel. I know Andrew's mentioned before that he's written some stories. I don't know if anybody else out there has written anything. I've tried and almost got through writing a story, and it was really good. I had all the character breakdowns. I even started the novel, and I think I got about a quarter into it, and it was super good. It was interesting, and the characters were amazing. And I thought, oh my goodness, they can make this into a movie. And I just stopped, right? Because then I started waking up to some ideas. I had other things to apply myself in, and I never saved it. I don't think I did. I never saved it, and it's gone now. So if I were to rewrite that story, it probably wouldn't take me long to hit those characters again and get back into that flow. But when you're 150 pages into a novel, writing a novel, right? It's hard to pick up that momentum when you quit on something, right? That's why it's important that, no matter what, you just keep going. And if you have to do it in baby steps, just keep going, right? It's when you lose that momentum that things fall apart, right? And we give up. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, I got to put this here because I'm trying to come into the comments and you guys are talking so fast, I'm losing track of where I am. Um, uh, Andrew says, I learned punctuation and grammar in different schools and different states, and it caused me a lot of trouble. How was that, Andrew? That it caused you lot? Oh, just from switching schools? I get that, right? Like, I went to so many schools but for me, it was a challenge. I always thought that I would be able to better fit in with every school. I just knocked it up to a new experience, and whatever I didn't get right, wherever I thought I failed in, I would just apply that to the next school that I came in. I didn't, if I had my choice, I wouldn't have been school hopping. But again, as a child, you have to go where your parents are going. And my dad was a nomad. Oh my goodness. He was always on the go. Um, the movie trailer looks okay. It's nice from what I saw. I like to write to Andrew. I want to do one of my late best friends. Oh, a novel? Oh, yes, I remember your friend there, William, right? You should write a novel about that experience with your friend. And what an honor for your friend too, right? Because I know you really loved him and that he was somebody who was really important to you. So William, yeah, for sure, right? I would say sit your butt down, right? Make the time and just start writing. Don't worry about it. Like I said, Grammarly, right? These writing apps will pick up where you slack off. So don't worry about where you're lacking in your writing skills, right? It's no excuse, right? The only excuse is, can you find the time? Can you apply yourself and sit down and not give up on that, no matter what, even if it's just one or two words, that you get those one or two words down so that you can actually say, right, that you're still moving, that you're still applying yourself to getting that novel done. Yeah. Um, oh, holy cow. Okay. Andrew says, I'm done almost no writing since my mother died. I would describe the story as I wrote as a mix of Peyton Place, Edgar Allan Poe with a dash of Agatha Christie. Wow, that would be pretty deep. That sounds like a bestseller to me. Mine was more on the lines of Lord of the Rings kind of style, with fairies and stuff like that. That was the novel that I was writing. I did write a story that ran through the school systems when I was really young. It just freaked the teachers and the higher ups in the school system out that somebody my age could write the way I did. But I spent a lot of time in my imagination as a child, and I'm sure my spelling was atrocious, but in telling stories. I don't think I really have a problem with that. I think I'm a pretty creative person that way. And yeah, they printed out my story, right? It was short stories we were supposed to write, and they sent it off to all the schools, and I think they even invited me to some kind of presentation, and oh, I think it was a interview on I might have even done that. I haven't thought of it in years and years and years, but I think there was actually a little show that they were doing, like a production, and I actually was interviewed for that in my writing. I don't remember how old I was, right? And maybe grade 3 or something. It wasn't grade 1, definitely wasn't grade 2, might have been grade 3. I don't have a lot of memories, right? Of when I was a kid. I have very few from under age 5, very, very few, maybe less than this many on my hands, maybe this many. Um, Once I was able to start going to school and stuff, right, the memories are more imprinted on me, but it comes from child, and it's sad to think that, a 5-year-old is experiencing trauma even at that age, but it does happen. It's more relevant today than it was in the age that I grew up, right? But then again, that might not necessarily be true. Maybe it was a lot of it was just zipped up, right? Because, when the after the war and stuff, when everybody came home, there was a lot of trauma, right? And a lot of it was kind of left within left within the family. So in the generations of the 60s and 70s, it might have just been just as prevalent as it is now. But back then, we were, I guess, a little bit heavy handed in upbringing the kids. And, right, we were taught to keep our mouth shut, not to, right, overextend ourselves in letting the family dynamics out within our friends, and right, it just wasn't something. I didn't really know what was going on with my friends within their family. They had no clue as to what was going on with my family. Like, we didn't have sleepovers. We didn't I slept over whenever I possibly could at somebody's house, but nobody ever came to our house for a sleepover. Never. I would never even put a friend through that, and I couldn't put my parents through that because, my mother would have to wear a guise for the sleepovers, right? She wouldn't have been able to be the person that she was, and then there would have been a price to pay for that. I don't remember ever having sleepovers when I was a kid or a teenager. It would never have been even a thought or a wish of mine at all. I enjoy the autobiographies too, Andrew. Yeah, I think that's a great idea to encourage William to write a story, right? And an autobiography, or it doesn't even have to be an autobiography. You could just use even any kind of story that you wanted to, but the main character, you can put all your best friend's characteristics to that character, and it would be like that he was written in to the storyline. But I know William well enough to know if he was going to write a novel about his friend, it would be absolutely the truth, right? Yeah, it would have to be an autobiography. Um, for anyone interested in writing, I highly recommend Stephen King's book on writing, Memoir of the Craft. Oh, yeah, I never even knew that he wrote a book like that. I thought he just did horror and suspense movies, books. When I was a teenager, I loved Stephen King. Well, I like Dean Koontz too, but Stephen King was my favorite. I thought that book, The Stand, they didn't do such a great job in the movie only because I read the book first, and imagination could create characters and outlines and landscapes so much better, right? Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, I read that book, Firestarter. You guys remember that Firestarter? I remember reading that book, and when the movie Firestarter came out, I thought they did a fantastic job. That's the one with Drew Barrymore when she was a little girl, right? And I thought they did a fantastic job on that one. Sometimes they do, right? Pride and Prejudice, there was another one. I read Pride and Prejudice, and when Pride and Prejudice came out, I thought they did a fantastic job on that book, right? I don't know if the Ten Commandments was ever a book or, Ben Hur. I don't know if these great movies of the past were ever novels, right? But they were great movies too. I Movies are something I just don't watch anymore, right? I have not. Last time was when me and my sister we went to see the new Spider-Man movie, and there was so much build up into the story because I guess there's so many Spider-Mans, nobody remembers where it left off. So it was like the first 20 minutes of the movie was just kind of telling the beginning storylines up to the point where they were starting the the new one, and I don't know how many it was, but this last one, and first 20 minutes I was kind of like, oh, right. And then it just started, and when it started it was just wow. It was just so fast, and there was so much action, and I'm an action fan, but I would have to say there was might have even been too much action in that last Spider-Man movie, but it was still really good. I still really enjoyed it. I think the next movie after I see Anaconda, right? I'll probably have to wait until that one's on DVD or something because I really do want to see it. And it's been out since Christmas already, so it's probably not even playing in the theaters still. I should check on that. Um, and then see it right away on cheapy night. I don't know if they have cheapy nights in the States on the theaters and stuff, but here on Tuesdays at Cinemaplex and stuff, you can see the big major movies for a decent price. I think it's like $10 or something. But then they charge you $15 for your popcorn, for your bag of popcorn. But they let you have free refills on your popcorn. So we just eat all our popcorn during the movie, and then we would go up to the popcorn stand and we get them to fill up our popcorn bags again to take home with us. Yeah, nothing like theater popcorn. There's nothing. I love theater popcorn. I haven't had popcorn for a long time either. I've been trying to be a little bit more attentive in my nutritions, and taking a little bit care of myself. I am grateful for my good health, but recognizing that I am getting up there. I'm 64 years old now, so I would like to be around. My goal is 114 years. I really would like to be around for that. The reason in wearing good footing. I always have something on my feet. I won't even get up when I'm sleeping at night and I get up in the middle of the night. I won't even walk to the washroom on the floors because of concrete floors. These high rises are all concrete floors. And I had the experience, and I'm grateful now for having that experience. When I was in my 30s, I was doing cafeteria work, and I would work in these big plants. And in the big plants, the floors are always concrete. but also being low income, I wasn't wearing Reeboks and Adidas and Nike, right? I wasn't spending money on quality shoes. And I'm not sure if those are quality shoes for your just everyday, day to day on what I was just saying, a good brand, right? You know, I wasn't wearing good shoes and I got that fasciitis. Is that what you call? And I got it in one foot and started walking and putting all my weight on the other foot. Within a month, I had fasciitis. I'm not pronouncing it properly. I had fasciitis in both my feet, and it was because I was wearing cheap Walmart runners, right? And I almost had to quit that job. And the doctor, when I went to see the doctor, he said, well, it takes about 11 months for that to go away. He gave me a whole bunch of exercises like with the soup cans and the tennis balls and the golf balls underneath the feet, rolling them around and stuff. And I was adamant. I really loved my job. Right? It's right. People, I think cafeteria work is not fun, but it's all in where you are. And these were big plants that I worked in where they would have 600 or 1,000 employees and they became like family, right? And when you're good at your job and you're getting that feedback, and I'd have cookie Tuesdays and I would spend the morning just cooking cookies, and the whole plant would fill up with the smell of my peanut butter chocolate chip cookies or whatever kind of cookies I was making in the day. And they would come in and sneak in on their right before their breaks and stuff to pick up their cookies because they just couldn't stand the smell, teasing them when they're out on the big machines and stuff. They would sneak in, pretend they were going to the washroom and pick up a couple of bags of cookies at the same time, right? And you get that compliment and those good feelings about it. And it made my job really, really enjoyable, you know, making my own homemade soups and being creative. And I had a really good owner of that cafeteria who just let me run it the way that I wanted it, as long as they were bringing in good money. They didn't care. And being the person, highly sensitives and empaths, there's nothing better that they like than just working by themselves, right? And not having the boss, or better yet, being the boss, not for the sake of to be able to tell people what to do, but for the sake of not being told what to do, right? Yeah. But yeah, that taught me a lesson, having that fasciitis in my feet, plantar's fasciitis. I think that's what they called it. It's where you get heel spurs and stuff. I couldn't even walk on my feet. And then the paint department in the plant that I worked at didn't want me to go. I couldn't stand up. The pain was constant. I couldn't sleep. It was just it was just constant. And then after about 6 months, I thought I can't do one more day of this. And I told everybody I was going to have to give my notice. And the guys in the plant department, or the paint department, went to Mark's work warehouse and they got me these things. I think they were called spaghetti shoes, because they were made of rubber and you just strap them over your shoes. And what it does is it takes your weight off your feet. And they're just made of rubber, and underneath it's just strips of rubber that are just kind of compounded and wrapped towards each other. And I think that idea was what it took to get the weight off my feet. And as soon as I put those on, I swear the pain went away, right? And as soon as I got home and took that off, I never even wanted to take those. If I could, I would sleep in them. I never did, right? You can't realistically sleep in them. But I think it even shortened the span, because I think within 9 months, I was cured. But after that, never again. I didn't care. If I had to spend $200 on a pair of good shoes, I would do that, because I couldn't imagine anybody who doesn't have access to well maintained feet. The fact that I wouldn't have been able to go for walks, I wouldn't have been able to go out and about and urban explore, right? Be out in the farm fields or go hiking and all these things that I love to do because I explore the outside too. I wouldn't have been able to do that. And if I hadn't, taken that lesson seriously, I would still uh, would have been in maybe a hurting state. You know what I mean? Like my well being might have gone downhill to the point where, right, where I'm sitting right now, I wouldn't be saying my gratefuls for my good health. And so I recognize that. Yeah, take good, uh, anything, take good care of your feet. Oh my goodness. But I tell you, rolling Campbell's soup cans under my feet was everything. It helped to relieve the heat and the pain because that's what it is. It's heat and sharp pain. And then as it's starting to heal, right? You're starting to get better is when it becomes recurrent electrical shocks. That's what I call them. It's like getting zapped, like you touch the outlet on your wall or something, and every once in a while you get that in your feet. You go, oh, and it'd take you by surprise, and maybe you'd limp for a little bit, and then it would go away until it happened again, right? But I was told by my doctor that was a good signal that things are starting to loosen up, right? Because it's just everything's just inflamed. It's just an inflammation, right? That's what that is. Okay, let's just come into these comments here. Do 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 do. Uh, I had trouble with punctuation and grammar because it was taught differently in different places, and deprogramming. Is that what you're saying? Or my glasses, you guys. Sentences, it baffled me. I agree, Cindy. I've read that you don't wait for inspiration, just jump in and start. I had a project once. I wrote at least one page of creative writing for 1 month. It got a number of ideas going. Yeah, that's the idea, but it's just that sometimes you can't always apply. Sometimes life gets you and you have to apply yourself to something. But even if you can just jot notes, if you can just even get one sentence across or something, like just never quit on it, right? I'll probably never pick up on that novel again. Well, I probably know I won't unless, right? Because my idea for the book that I truly want to write will serve so well. It'll serve many, 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 right? And sometimes it's easier to let a book tell the story than to personally tell that story, right? Put yourself in that limelight. Be like Stephen King with that, what do they call them? Ghostwriter. Maybe I will be a ghostwriter in that novel, but I know that novel will serve and people will recognize it as a truth and something relevant and something important to move by. But right? Ideas are a dime a dozen, aren't they? And unless you put the action, right, to the idea, it doesn't mean anything. Why? Because right, there are a dime a dozen. Ideas are a dime a dozen. I could sit here right now and just spew them out. But unless I could put an action towards it, it's not going to do any good. What I could say is probably I could put the ideas out there, right? But then somebody else would pick up that baton and run with it, right? And then what would happen at that point? Would I consider it resentful in any way? I'm not a resentful person. I think sometimes it's more important to get the message out, rather than being the presenter and the one glorified for saving the day or pointing something wrong and making it right. Like, what matters is getting the word out there, but everybody just hoards everything. That's my idea, right? Right? And if somebody happened on to something amazing, to hoard it to themselves, and if it hurts somebody by not having that information or that vaccine, right? Or that medical device, like, right? I think that would be on them, that there would be karma. They call it karma. It would be on them a little bit for stalling it out, what was supposed to come forward, right? Because I'm a believer that, for the most part, even in the novel that I want to write, that it's not necessarily Cindy's idea, right? That we have to uh, take note. It's something or someone else that has come across our path and caught our attention, or opened up our eyes to an idea or an insight, and right, they're not getting the credit that credit is due, right? Unless you're at the Academy Awards and they say, "Well, I'd like to thank my wife, and then I'd like to thank God," right? And so, in recognition that way, that's amazing. That happens so rarely, right? Everybody's out there to make a dollar, to make an impact, and they don't care whose head they're stomping on to get it done, right? But my idea, it's more important to get it out there. If it's important, if it's going to help even one person, right? It's important to make the time and get that done. And I guess you guys, I have an idea for a book, right? I've got the time now. Do I apply myself? Do I give myself? Do I make myself that example to everybody else and start that novel? Look what you guys did. Now I'm going to be starting to write a novel. Is now the time to do that, now that I'm into working with my sisters? Yeah, I've got my measuring tape. This is how I walk around the house all day, taking pictures of items and stuff. But we had some really neat things. I sold a teapot 2 days ago. A teapot. I sold it for $80. It was a nice teapot, but a teapot for $80? Oh my goodness. I would never. But somebody did. Wasn't me. Um, Oops, I should have said I wrote at least one page of creative writing each day for a month. I think that's amazing, right? Could I write one page a day? That would say that maybe I could write a book in a year. Then I could go over it again, right? Be my own editor in that and go over it again and then put the manuscript together and probably take another 6 months to get all that done. And then maybe in 2 years, I could have that book being sent off to different publishers and see if I could get it published. They don't say necessarily that it's a good idea anymore to go with the big publishing companies and everything when you have an idea. Just like an idea is a dime a dozen. Writers, right? Everybody can put a book together. You can tell AI an idea for a novel, and they'll write it for you. They'll write it for you, and it can be written within a couple of hours. And that's the truth. That's what this AI generation is doing right now. And we are moving so fast in that aspect. Did any of you guys watch that interview with Elon Musk this week? He was talking about, it's going to come to a point, and it's not going to be too far from now, that everybody is going to have an access to a robot, right? Even if it's just to take care of your elderly parents or babysit or cook in the house. Like, oh my goodness, you're going to just leave a robot to babysit your kids? I'm thinking when he said this, but that's how fast things are moving. And he says it in the beginning, it will just be basically for the well to do and stuff. But he says, like everything else that's new, it's expensive. And as it becomes the norm, he says, even poor people will have access to the technology of robots, and it will be very, very, very common. He says he didn't know where the world was going. He says not the Terminator kind of way, right? But he says it's going to be the norm. He says, and he says that's what he sees for the future, right? Is that technology that we're all going to have a little bit easier lives. But my concern is, and the question was brought up to him, is that idea that uh, I lost what I was just gonna say in that idea that, where we would lose our inspiration and our, um, how are we going to entertain ourselves, right? What will be our purpose if our needs are taken care of like that we don't have to wash the dishes anymore, we don't have those responsibility with the kids and our parents and the schooling and stuff, and it's going to take out a whole lot of jobs and stuff, right? A whole lot of jobs. And right, they'll have to go, everybody will have to go on a global paycheck just to get by that, right? This is the amount of money that you're getting every month. And then the people who actually have to put in the technology and the noodle and stuff into things that aren't quite fixed yet, that they're the ones who would make the extra money, right? They're the ones who would be the rich people, right? So that's how he thought that the world is going. But that idea of being able to motivate and inspire ourselves will be necessary, because if a human doesn't feel like they're useful, they're not going to want to stick around. And in my idea, that is detrimental to this idea that we could possibly become extinct, because we feel that, what's the point? Why are we here? Right? And I think the idea is that we should enjoy our lives, right? That life should be enjoyable. And so instead of doing all that work, maybe we can travel. Maybe we can all have RVs and visit different countries and all those places that we would love to visit. Here's a question for you guys. I'm interested in this one. If you had the opportunity to go to just one place, one big trip, right? You have all the money you want, you can take whatever transportation that you want to go. If you can even, right, go with the people you care about. Where would you go? Right? Just one place. Where would you go? It's a good question. It really is. It makes you think. And I think for myself, I don't know if you could call it a country, but I would love to see the Mediterranean, right? I not just go on a Mediterranean cruise, but have stopovers. I would just love to go to Italy. I'd love to go to Spain and Portugal. Oh my goodness. I would just love to go to all those countries around the Mediterranean, like a 2 or 3 month tour. I think that would be so much fun. Oh my goodness. Father Lopez is here tonight. Oh my goodness, I haven't seen you for a long time. Oh, did you really? You know, she's been popping. I don't know if we're talking about the same lady, right? But uh Magdalenes, the Marys have been popping into conversation for me for a little while now. And I don't know if we're talking about the same lady, but when you say that, I believe you and I trust you in that, David, because yeah, I've been open to the ideas that possibly, that the way that we're moving, and I these resurrections in what's going on with the world and what the world really needs right now, and it is the Marys, right? It is in that that cradle of mother, and that caring, and that care, that of the females figures that are so important, and for the longest time, possibly thousands of years, have been put off to the wayside in, you know well, that male domination, you darn guys. Right? That the men can't do it all by themselves, but then again, neither can the women, right? So we have to find a way that we can get back into that partnership, that parenthood, where the children can actually have that balance in their upbringing. We need to get back to a state where there is a balance of where we want to go, right? That the world can be a place of magnificence and caring and kindness, but yeah, I'm very appreciative that you had a conversation, right? I'm going to assume when you say Our Lady that it might have been one of the Marys that you were talking to, right? Oh, but thank you for praying for me. Oh my goodness, it was very kind to you, very kind to you, and you had a good talk. I appreciate that. I could use a little bit of good cheer in that fashion. I really could. Right. But then again, we all could, right? We all could. And what's most important again is having these conversations, right? To let people know that there's a lot of good going on in the world. We spend a lot of time looking at what's not going well out there. We're not taking into consideration that we've come a long way. We really have come a long way. And, it's in that partnership, not just between a man and a woman, but between all of us. If we could just have those sets of base values where, people who are different from each other can have a way of being able to move with each other. I'm a true believer. It takes all kinds to make the world, right? And I would like to see a more all inclusive world, and right, and put some of these ideas of dominance and control off to the side a little bit, and I think that idea of that mother, that nurturing is something that is much needed. And I don't think it would take much to get us back on the right track, right? And sometimes it's making a mess to clean a mess, and you can see that we got lots of messes going on in this world, right? But at the same time, in having those messes, it's a great opportunity to bring about some balance, right? So that's why I always say everything's going to be okay, right? Everything's going to be okay. That even though we don't know from one moment to the next how things are going to be, if we have that faith and that optimistic attitude that, we can trust that everything is going to be okay in one way or another, right? It'll all balance out, right? And in the moment, it doesn't always look pretty. Like I said, sometimes you got to make a mess to clean a mess. And I don't worry myself over the catalysts out there, right? We know, we see these catalysts. Uh, yeah, their peacock feathers and their attitudes, and they're poking at those that they want to intimidate, right? But again, right, there's that balance. I'm going to start getting the parents back together for a lifetime, right? Maybe we need somebody to say no more divorce. Isn't it funny though, because if you look at the Christianity, even going back 20 or 30 years ago, I knew, they had a problem with birth control and they had a problem with divorce. And I was kind of on the fence. I was thinking, oh, yeah, but lots of times we make mistakes and end up with the wrong people. Maybe it is a good idea, to let the abortion happen or allow people to have divorces. And you know what? I have a totally different attitude towards that because I now believe, right, that even fetuses have souls. And right, I wasn't even I wasn't even sure if, right, adult humans had souls. But right, it takes time sometimes, and in making those mistakes and having failures, that sometimes after a while we get to realize that sometimes we do make bad decisions, and sometimes in standing up for what we believe in, right, it's difficult because there are people poking, and peacocking, and sometimes, right, out of majority rules, that we back down from our beliefs and change things. But change is inevitable, isn't it? Right? Thank you, David. It was very kind to you. Our Lady of Tenderness, who's she? I have no idea. I'll Google her, but if I don't have one of you let me know right away, I will Google her. I'm going to write it down right now. And like I said, I like to understand these things, and especially when I have people who come into the conversations. It's an amazing way for us to actually have conversations and be course corrected in our misunderstandings, right? Call them misunderstandings. Okay, I'm just going to see where I left off up here. The movie. Oh yeah. Oh, you read Firestarter too. Didn't see the movie or the Stephen King books. I've read, I think, Salem's Lot is my favorite. Salem's Lot. I read that one too, but I don't remember. It's been a long time. Like I said, I was a teenager. I was a big fan of the Stephen King novels when I was a teenager. But yeah, I like the biographies now. If I'm going to read a book, it's probably going to be motivation, inspiration, or it's going to be a biography. But then again, the last biography I read was a long time ago, a couple years ago, actually. I think was a David Suzuki's biography. There was another one. Um, I can't remember his name. He's an actor. He just wrote a biography too, and I have that one, but I haven't read it yet. But I do enjoy the biographies. But thank you so much for praying for me, David. I really appreciate that. Uh, Andrew says, I go to the town of, oh, in England. My first ancestor in America came from there in the 1600s. You're one of the oldest families, eh, Andrew? 1600s. That's really, really early. I watch a gentleman, and he's a metal detector, and he has two channels. He has Stealth Diggers, and he has Not Thursday. I watch the Not Thursdays every once in a while. I watch Stealth Diggers, but most of it is because I love the outdoors, and he does a lot of hiking in the forests and stuff. But he's a metal detectorist, and he digs up the old colonists' homesteads. He walks in the forest until he finds, what do you call them, cellars, rock cellars, and then he metal detects. And it's really neat, some of the things that he finds, like when you find a shoe buckle, like when the first settlers from America came here and they had those shoe buckles, or the knee buckles, right? Those are the really, really first settlers of America. Yeah. That's interesting, Andrew. Yeah, that's really neat. And that would be amazing, wouldn't it? Right? To go back to where your family started from. My family was from England also. I'm sure they were nomads. They were from everywhere, but my mother's side and my father's side, but my mother's side were aristocrats and part of the royal households and stuff. My father's side, I think, were more, laymen, and they were probably probably pretty poor, and they were probably looking to escape hardship. On my father's side, I wish I had delved in a little bit different, a little bit more into my family's history. Right, I do regret that I never did. um, my mother, I only know about my mother's side because she had the family tree in her storage trunk, and she'd pull it out once in a while, and we found it interesting because, on my mother's side, they were already bishops and nuns and archbishops. Like the Archbishop of Canterbury was one of our ancestors. And I don't know if he was a good guy and stuff. I kind of did a little research on him and stuff when I found out about him. And he lived at the same time. He was actually uh, Friends of the Vatican and Queen Queen Elizabeth, not the first one, like the first one, the first Queen Elizabeth, the lady who was who had the red hair, who was bald. Um, yeah, so interesting stuff. Yeah. Okay. Aqua. Oh, I haven't seen any. Is he still doing videos? I know recently he did a series in England. I did catch that series when they paid him to go over to England, and he was doing the canals and what do you call those moats that round the castles and stuff, that he was doing a few of those shows, and I found that really interesting. Yeah, I had a list here, you guys, of funny stories, and I didn't tell one funny story tonight. We just came in and had chit chats tonight. It was kind of nice still, but maybe next week we'll try again and just make it a light a light night rather than something heavy, right? And I do appreciate that I'm able to do that one day a week, and I'd much rather do it on Sunday nights with you guys, right? But I wrote down about 10, what, nine different funny stories that I thought were funny in the moment, that I thought you guys might enjoy if I told them, but I didn't even tell one of them. So maybe we'll try again next week, because I can see now that it's after 9 o'clock already. And I know some of you've got to work tomorrow. Some of you don't, right? But gotta let you have a part of your evening for yourself. I appreciate that you guys come and hang out with me. every Sunday. I know it's right. It's so much appreciated. I know that you guys set that time aside for me every single week, and I just wanted to recognize you in that. And again, oh my goodness, Father Lopez, that was so nice of you to come in tonight. It's the first thing I'm going to do when I end my live show, and I'm going to, right, do a little bit of research in who you were praying with and who you were having a conversation with about me today. I much appreciate that. Everybody, you have a great night. If you want to come hang out with us during the course of the week, I'd love to have you. I know Eugene for sure will pop in. Kathy's been popping in, right? If you want to come hang out, 9 o'clock Central, Monday to Friday, right? Give or take 2 minutes or so. But I'm gonna make a fresh cup of coffee, even though I have a fresh cup of coffee here, but it's not hot anymore. It's cold. I only got one sip out of it. So I'm going to make myself a cup of coffee and do a little bit of Googling and call it a night. Everybody, thank you so much. See you next week.